From AfterBuzz TV's Chief Operating Officer Phil Svitek comes a weekly digital series that shares his insights, concepts, and findings from years of learning and mentorship. Welcome to Phil Svitek Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the series. My name is Phil Svitek, AfterBuzz TV's Chief Operating Officer since inception back in 2011. Now today I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's an impromptu lesson. And it's impromptu because this weekend we had our AfterBuzz TV Summit. In essence, Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos gave wonderful speeches to motivate everybody and give them lessons, as we normally do at the end of the year. And then we broke off into various workshops. And for my workshop this year, I met with a lot of AfterBuzz hosts and basically talked to them about ways they can take advantage of AfterBuzz. And how does this apply to you? Well, what started off as one thing really turned into another. There was a common thread throughout each of the people that I met with, which is they kept saying, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know, I'm trying to find my calling, I'm not where I'm supposed to be at. And it really got me thinking, because throughout the day I was meeting with each of these hosts and I kept saying, you're never going to be at a certain point and it's going to be complete. Because if you complete something in this regard, that means you're dead, right? So life really is just a journey, and where you're supposed to be is right here, right now. You may not ultimately be doing exactly what you want to be doing, but that doesn't mean you're not where you're supposed to be at this given point in time. We all build to something, it takes time to get there. If you look at historically at any of the successful people, it isn't until later on in life that they create the thing that defines them. But that doesn't mean before that they weren't doing nothing. No, all the things that happened in their lives earlier were the building blocks, the foundation to get them to that pinnacle, that culmination. But it's a journey, and you can't get to that moment in time without all this. Too oftentimes we like to skip these various steps, and especially in this instant gratification age. I remember a lot of people back in the day when we first started with AfterBuzz would go up to whether myself or Kevin and they would say, I want to be the next Rachel Zoe. And I remember Kevin saying to them, well, how many celebrities have you styled? Like, are you into fashion and so forth? No, she just looks really cool. And at the time she had her show. And he would say to them, well, she styled celebrities for 15 years before she became the Rachel Zoe that we know and love. So can you at least give me a year? And when I look at that, it really is reminiscent of all the things that we're supposed to do. John Taffer of Bar Rescue over on Paramount Network is another example of this. He has a culmination of so many years of being in the bar industry. Starting off and then rising the ranks and so forth to now being a world's foremost expert in bars, and then he became a TV personality. So in that respect, that's just one angle of it. You got to find your own way and understand where you are at is okay. And in Silicon Valley, there's a term called the fast fail, or sometimes the more technical term is the Scrum method, which means you create you take a task and deduce it down to the smallest accomplishable part and knock it out, and then kind of assess from there. It's a fast review and assess process, also while knocking it out. And so in that respect, when you look at finding your purpose and when you're supposed to be, it really is about just honing in on a choice, right? And committing to it, knocking it as fast as you can in the smallest form, right? We all have these big dreams, but that's part of the problem, is that we are so overwhelmed by these exhausting dreams, and they're wonderful, but we gotta minimize them to their simplest form. And there is a simplest form to it, right? Every 1,000-step journey begins with the first step, that old cliche. And so in that respect, begin your journey. Figure out what that small step is, do it, and learn from it, right? Assess. And we talked about the J curve being a metaphor for life. And for those of you not familiar with that, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that lesson, because it is very applicable in life. But the ultimate message of the J curve as a metaphor for your life is that you're going to do things and you're going to fail at them, but it's okay because in that failure, something will be correct. And it's that, even if it's a single thing, that's the thing you got to focus on. And then that becomes your next driving force towards the next task, right? And then see how that works out. You know, interestingly enough, recently I read a James Cameron quote that I really love. I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit, where it basically says, if you have very high ambitions and you fail, your failures will be much higher than the successes of most other people. And I find that to be very true, right? A lot of people will tell us why something can't be done. They might have this so-called knowledge, and they'll say, well, you can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. Well, if we lived by this principle alone, we would be living as cavemen. Because from that perspective, everything was impossible. And now we're going to the moon as if it's nothing, and other amazing accomplishments. And so by that respect, do not be afraid of what is impossible. People used to say the 4-minute mile was impossible up until the first person that did it. And then all of a sudden, an influx of people were doing the 4-minute mile. So when it comes to finding your purpose, just understand that if you're doing something you're passionate about and you're making strides forward and you're learning from your successes equally as your failures, then you're doing something right. You're where you're supposed to be. And when we talk about finding your purpose, it really is in those failures and trying something new. Because to be honest, I always wanted to be a film editor. That's what I thought I wanted to be. And then I met Kevin Undergaro, and after working on his film Adventures of Serial Buddies, he came up to me with this idea for AfterBuzz TV, and I said, sure. I didn't know what it's going to be. Neither did he, necessarily, not to the extent that it is today, but we did it, and all of a sudden I found a passion for it, right? But I never would have had that passion if I didn't step into that opportunity. And ironically, you know, I found that passion, and then through this, I have found a passion for teaching. And who knows what my next passion will be, but in life, we don't discover our purpose, we don't discover our passions until we start doing something. It's a very cliche thing, but just do. And this idea that you haven't found your purpose yet, or you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, is a form of resistance, is a form of procrastination. Others term it self-doubt, and that's really what it is. And I understand. But the problem is, you're going to start, your mind's playing a mental game of doing pros and cons, all the things you're good at and all the things you're not good at. And the problem with this game is that ultimately, for every pro you're going to list a con, if not more, because that's how your mind works. So the only way to win that game is to not play it at all. So in essence, when it comes to finding your purpose, it really is more about action than thinking. So hopefully this lesson was a benefit to you. I know it was a benefit to a lot of the hosts this weekend, and I'm proud of them, and I'm excited to see what they accomplish, and I'm excited to see what you accomplish. So there you go. Bye.
Now, before we click away to another lesson from Phil, here's a few more things. Please be sure to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this episode, and make sure to tell your friends and family about us. Leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions and what lessons you would like to see Phil tackle next. The more specific you are with your questions, the better he can answer them. Also, you can support this show on patreon.com/PhilSpeedTech if it doesn't burden you financially in any way. Every contribution is truly appreciated, and it helps defray the cost of putting on this show, which you can imagine takes a lot of effort. To be notified when future episodes release, subscribe on either Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever other platform is most convenient to you. Specific links are provided below. Lastly, if you're interested in joining AfterBuzz TV as a host or an intern, visit AfterBuzz TV's contact page. A direct link is provided below. Or, of course, you can tweet at PhilSpeedTech or Instagram me at BonjourJulienne. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Julie Bear, a producer on the show, and we will see you next week with another one of Phil's life lessons. Bye.